alanganan. Hanap ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang inirang, duyan ka ng magiting. Sa matulungin, di ka pasisiil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong buhaw. May dalagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig. Luma ng araw ng walhating pusunta, buhay langit sa piling ko. Aming ligaya na pag may pangalit, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
In 2019, after completing our 100th consultation, the team at Agritecture put our heads together to figure out how we could best serve our audience with a low-cost digital platform for planning commercial urban farms. The result is Agritecture Designer. Through easy-to-navigate tools, customized educational content, and unique partnerships with financing vehicles and solutions providers, Agritecture Designer makes the complex challenge of planning a controlled environment farm straightforward. First, we'll help you lay out your vision and find inspiration from existing farm projects. Next, 6 of our expert consultants will walk you through the key best practices any entrepreneur needs to know when starting an urban ag business through concise video modules, along with supplementary resources and activities. Our crop research tool will help you conduct a data-driven market research and calculate a fair market price for the crops you're considering growing. Next, our farm modeling tool will allow you to build financial projections for a controlled environment farm anywhere in the world in less than 5 minutes. Finally, our Agritecture consulting staff will advise you on site selection, equipment selection, and financing prep. Agritecture Designer is 100% focused on delivering value to our users, so we're constantly evolving the platform based on direct user feedback. Our vision is to transform the industry so that anyone, anywhere can plan a viable urban farming business with ease. So join us.
Hollywood legend and humanitarian Audrey Hepburn once said, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." Never before have her words rung true to so many people than in this pandemic.
Here in the Philippines, the lockdowns and continued restrictions made plantitos and plantitas out of countless homebound folk who never even knew that they had a green thumb.
Along with such discoveries, feelings of calm, joy, hope have sprung along with the flowers, herbs, vegetables, and all things fresh and green, making the long lockdowns more bearable and the future looking plantastic indeed.
Welcome to the Manila Times' latest digital lifestyle forum titled Plantastique, Sustainable Gardening for Home and Business. I am Defort Villaseran, and I am pleased to join today our lifestyle and entertainment editor, Tessa Mauricio Ariola, in what I'm sure will be another riveting discussion.
You're right, Defort. Today, we've gathered experts, agronomists, horticulturists, hydroponic farmers, and passionate green-thumbed influencers to share everything from tips and tricks in growing backyard gardens to the many promising ways that this fantastic hobby can turn into business ventures. But before we get growing, may I first call on the Manila Times President and CEO to properly welcome our viewers and guest speakers to our Plantastic Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dante Clink Ang II.
Thank you, Tessa. First of all, allow me to greet the speakers from whom we'll be hearing today. Mr. Nicolo Abelosturi of Down to Earth PH, Ms. Angie King of King Tower Farms, Dr. Fernando Sanchez Jr. of the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, Professor Ryan Tayumbong, also of UPLB, Professor Brian Apasionado, also of UPLB, Mr. Graham Coates of Mega World Lifestyle Malls, and of course, allow me to greet our AMCs today, Tessa Mauricio and Defort Villaseran. First of all, welcome to everyone attending the seminar today. As Tessa said, this is, and Defort said, this is going to be a riveting discussion. Backyard gardening has been, of course, a therapeutic activity for many Filipinos during the pandemic. But it's interesting that, this activity could lead also to some commercial enterprises that will be suitable in the new normal after the pandemic. I just want to say thank you to all of those who made this event possible today. As you know, the Manila Times organizes several of these fora to help bring experts directly to you, so that you may hear from them. So let me just thank the other organizations that have made this possible. First of all, our co-presenters, Agritecture, Mega World and Mega World Lifestyle Malls, our special partners, Hidden Hill Farm by Josefino, Baker J. Manila. And of course, I'd like to thank our organizational partners, the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Philippines, the Davao City Chamber of Commerce and Industry Incorporated, the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, the Italian Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, the Management Association of the Philippines, and of course UPLB in specifically the College of Agriculture and Science. Thank you also to everyone watching this event today on our website and on our social media platforms. I hope this will be a very interesting discussion, and there are a lot of speakers from over here today, so I think it's important that we get our program underway. So with that, thank you once again, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ang. And of course, Defort, Sir Clink is right. We've got, I think, 7 speakers who will talk.
So we have a whole lot today.
And they will talk on a variety of things today concerning backyard gardening and farming and all that. And by the end of the forum, we will all get to ask our burning questions. Mine is, sana hindi ako mahiya itanong to sa kanila, Defort, pero bakit ba nahihiya ang makahiya? Maganda bang tanong yun? Diba?
I think best question of the day award yan. When it comes to the questions, we already have some coming in, so I think we should rush into our speakers.
Yes. So let's go ahead and begin our talks. Our first guest speaker is an arborist certified by the International Society of arboriculture, and an agriculturist licensed by the Professional Regulatory Commission. As administrator of UP Los Baños, he has been division chair for crop production and management, crop science cluster, assistant to the vice chancellor for planning and development, vice chancellor for planning and development, and finally, chancellor. From UP Maroon, through and through, he has a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, specializing in landscape horticulture, and a master's degree in environmental studies, minoring in sociology. It was at the University of Tokyo, however, where he completed his doctorate degree in landscape architecture, specializing in landscape planning, on a full Japanese Ministry of Education scholarship grant. A noted and active researcher and consultant in his field for 20 years and counting, please welcome Dr. Fernando Sanchez Jr.
Hi, thank you, Tessa. Thank you, the Port. Thank you for having me today. Okay, so please allow me to share my presentation for today. I believe you can see the presentation already. Okay, thank you. So magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Fernando C. Sanchez Jr., the project leader of the landscaping team of the College of Agriculture and Food Science of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. This afternoon, I would like to share with all of you the edible landscaping, or EL, as we call it, in achieving food and nutrition security. So the COVID-19 pandemic brought challenges in our society, which are constantly faced by our fellow kababayans until now. And one of the major pressing issues that each of us is facing are the rising food prices and food and nutrition insecurity. As a matter of fact, according to the 2019 expanded National Nutrition Survey of our Department of Science and Technology Food and Nutrition Research Institute, approximately 2 out of 3 Filipino households experience food insecurity, or the limited access to food at the individual and household level due to lack of money and other resources. Since 2010, edible landscaping has shown its potential to address issues on food and nutrition security by providing an opportunity to have a source of safe, sufficient, and nutritious food for our family. So what is edible landscaping? So edible landscaping can be defined as an innovative food production technology that merges the science of crop production, especially organic agriculture practices, and the art of landscape planning and garden design. Edible landscaping has 4 goals, which we also call the 4 Ks of EL. Ang una, aesthetics or kagandahan. Pangalawa, functionality or kapakinabangan. Third, health and wellness or kalusugan. And the last, self-sufficiency or kasapatan. So these are the main goals of EL. With edible landscaping, we can establish attractive and functional spaces like the EL, Technology Demonstration Garden at our very own UPLB campus, and the School Plus Home Garden in Pila, Laguna. Through EL, we can also promote health and wellness across generations. So we can start our children to learn how to grow plants at an early age, how to eat vegetables. And of course, the elderly can find time to do edible landscaping instead of watching Netflix. Or they can teach their apo how to grow plants as a pastime, as a healthy pastime for both young and old. According to DOST FNRI, there is a substantial decrease in the vegetable intake of Filipino adults regardless of sex and household income in their 2019 expanded National Nutrition Survey. According to the World Health Organizations, adults need to consume at least 400 grams of vegetables. This is excluding potatoes, tubers, and starchy root crops, in order to reduce the risk of non-communicable diseases and help ensure adequate daily intake of dietary fibers. In addition, according to the World Bank, undernutrition has been a serious problem in the Philippines for nearly 30 years. Imagine, 3 decades, still a problem, undernutrition. And have been almost no improvement in the prevalence of undernutrition in our country. Moreover, 1 in 3 children younger than 5 years old suffered from stunting or being small in size for their age. We must ensure that our future generation will undergo proper growth and development, which is key for the future of our country. We need to invest in our youth, especially infants and young children, together with their mothers, to ensure that they have proper support for achieving optimal nutrition from day 0 until the first 1,000 days of life. Investing in our children, the future leaders and drivers of the Philippine economy, and the 4th and 5th industrial revolution must be made a priority. This entails interagency, interdisciplinary, and multi-sectoral partnership in developing programs, projects, and activities converging with nutrition, health, agriculture, policy development, communication, and behavioral sciences. We can achieve this by having at least an edible garden at our homes and communities. Lastly, we can create sources of safe, sufficient, and nutritious food in households and communities through edible landscaping. To realize these 4 goals, the EL team of UPLB has been proactively working with different sectors, community-based organizations, private organizations, government agencies, since the pandemic hit our country. Our team developed and currently disseminates the EL starter kits, which includes sample designs, planting, and information materials with the help of our funding agency, the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Agricultural Research. So these starter kits are free. So libre po sila, and it can be requested through the DA Bureau of Agricultural Research. Since the start of the community quarantine last year, we have been conducting online trainings and webinars on EL for garden owners and enthusiasts. We have also been invited by different government agencies and organizations with a similar goal of promoting food self-sufficiency in the household level. We have reached out to urban and peri-urban communities and local government units for partnerships and establishing technology demonstration gardens, which will serve as learning sites and sources for food for our stakeholders. Partnership were selected between our team, the Quezon City government, led by Mayor Joy Belmonte, and officials of Barangay Batasan Hills as our project site. We have also provided technical assistance to the city government of Parañaque and Muntinlupa City in strengthening their campaign for growing safe and nutritious food through the help of edible landscaping. Lastly, I would like to share the vision of our team. No Filipino should be hungry. Having an EL garden in our homes is more than having a source of food to put on your table. Rather, this is a testament to our commitment to achieve food and nutrition security for the future of our country and humanity. Maraming salamat at isang masagana, malusog at makulay na buhay sa ating lahat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez, for laying the groundwork for our next two speakers. It's very interesting how you mentioned the EL kits. I think that's a lot of our viewers would be very interested in being able to tap and source your free resource for all those plantitos and plantitas wanting to get started.
Yeah, yes, Laporte. We're giving it away for free. It's through the DA Bureau of Agricultural Research, which they can get these starting kits, just to encourage people to learn how to grow edible plants or vegetables, for that matter, for their own home use. So it's critical for our population or the Filipino people to learn how to grow their own food, especially this time of the pandemic. During this.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Sanchez. Please stay on board, and we'll be fielding some questions regarding your talk. But we'll move on first to the next two other speakers, your colleagues. Tessa, you know what's one of the interesting things about our speakers, our set of speakers for today, is that they kind of ramp up the interest levels for our plantitos and plantitas. Those who just want to go with the starter kits and then move on to mid-range creative farm setups. Finally, going into how we can actually help out the agricultural output and food security of the country.
Yes, it's very true. You know how I appreciated how the professor and the esteemed doctor actually started out his talk by telling us how to actually get even our children interested in planting, in gardening. And I can't think of like one day actually like just picking a herb probably from the garden if I finally do end up gardening myself and just cooking from our backyard. So marami pa po tayong matututunan from our next speaker. So the Fort, I know you have the introductions for our next esteemed guest.
Well, going forward with the edible landscaping topic, to talk about starting your own edible landscaping garden at home, our second speaker is Professor Brian Apasionado. Now, aside from teaching at UP Los Baños, he is a licensed agriculturist. He does research and creative work as a staff member and as a leader of numerous agricultural projects. So he pens articles in agricultural journals, he writes papers in international publications, and even creates posters and infographics and other content for national and international fora. He conducts countless training programs and is often a resource person for TV interviews and webinars such as this. So he has a Bachelor of Science degree. He has one in agriculture, specializing in landscape horticulture from UP Los Baños. And he has a master's degree in international agricultural development, specializing in the field of tropical horticulture from the Tokyo University of Agriculture. So without further ado, we welcome Mr. Brian Apasionado. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, the Fort, for that introduction. So, a fantastic afternoon sa ating lahat. Good afternoon. So, let me share my screen first. All right. So, I know that from the discussion of Doc Dindo earlier, you are now more excited and curious on how you can start your own edible landscape garden at home. And don't worry, I've got you covered because I will guide you now on how you can create or start your own edible landscaping at home and right now. So edible landscaping follows a process called the edible landscape triangle. Like the conventional landscaping, this includes 3 phases. So the design, implementation, and maintenance phase. In the design phase, this is where we conceptualize our design to create a master plan for our garden. Then from that plan, we will now implement that design to our space. And after implementation, of course, we need to maintain our garden. But for this forum, I will be focusing mainly on the design and implementation phase to guide you in starting your own edible landscape garden. I will share with you 7 tips. Yes, we have 7 tips and steps for you to own and start your own edible landscape garden. Let's start with step numero 1. So The first step is to select and identify our softscapes, aka our plants, so that what do we want in our garden. So to help us choose in our softscapes, we have some considerations. So first, it should be edible because we are doing edible landscape garden. Although you can still include some ornamental plants, just make sure to follow the 70-30 rule. That is 70% edible plants plus 30% ornamental plants. And then the second consideration is they should be nutritious. The plants that we will be planting in our garden should be nutritious because this is what we will be feeding our family. And third is personal preference. Okay, so choose or plant only vegetables or fruits that your family eats or the favorites of your kids. And next, they should have ornamental value. Okay, so choose vegetables or crops that have colorful fruits or colorful leaves or interesting shape and structure to add to the aesthetic of your garden. And lastly, the size of the mature plant that you are going to plant, particularly if you are planning to grow fruit trees. So you must consider the size or the mature size of the fruit trees in consideration with the size of your space. And then after considering the softscapes or our plants, you could also look at or list the hardscapes. So hardscapes are the non-living components of our landscape or garden. So it could be our pathway, our trellis, or benches and tables. So you must look into that as our first step. And then the second step is to analyze your area and to identify the biophysical and climatic condition present in your garden. So does the plant you listed in step number 1 suitable for your area? Is it suitable in the prevailing climate? Normally, we have pinakbet vegetables for warm areas and then chop suey vegetables for cold areas. And also observe the length of sunlight exposure, presence of shade, rainfall, wind, and also the strength and weaknesses of your area. Where is the flooded spaces or area, or even the pleasant and unpleasant views? Because all these factors can affect the growth and development of your plants, and also for you to have a more successful edible landscape garden design. The third one is to make a drawing and planting plan for your design. So after you gathered all the information from the previous steps, you are now ready to conceptualize and draw your design. So this will help you in planning and visualizing your garden. Always remember, your imagination is your only limit. So create and draw. But to give you, to guide you to this planning or drawing, you must be guided with the principles and elements of design. So for the elements of design, we have form, color, line, and texture. And then for the principles of design, we have balance, contrast, scale and proportion, emphasis, and harmony. So here we have to know how we combine different plants to create a more interesting landscape. For example, to create a good contrast in a garden, we can combine red lettuce and green lettuce. So we have a good contrast in color. Imagine if we combine mustard and pechay, which has very similar texture and color. The contrast is very low and it doesn't make our landscape that interesting. So we should follow these elements and principles of design so that we can create an edible garden that does not only makes our stomach full, but also our eyes wonder and appreciate. And always remember that planning is a cost-effective measure since you can plan what materials, the softscapes and hardscapes you will use and where will you plant it on your garden. It is easier to make corrections on paper than in real life. After the preparation of design, you can now go to the next phase of which is the implementation phase. Holding your final plan, your design, you must construct first your hardscape before you plant your crops. That is our step number 4. And in planning for your hardscapes, you can always use indigenous materials like our coconut husk or bamboo, or recyclable materials like plastic bottles and containers. Just make sure you make use of your art and creativity, okay? Because in edible landscaping, we are not just recycling, we are upcycling. And after you prepare your hardscapes, you can now start planting. In step number 5, always remember to start sterilizing or sanitize your tools to prevent the spread of disease among your plants. You can sterilize your tools using 1 part of bleach solution to a 9-part water. You can use a cloth and wet it using the solution, then wipe it to your tools. And step number 6 is planting time. You can use or you can sow your seeds in any growing media available. You can use combination of garden soil, compost, coir dust, and even rice hull. You must also sterilize your soil to kill the weeds and pathogens that might affect your seedlings. To do this, you can do soil steam sterilization or pagsasangag ng lupa, or soil solarization or pagkukulob ng lupa using the heat of the sun. And then when your seedlings grow and are ready for transplanting, normally if they have true leaves, don't transplant them directly to the field or to the garden. They should first undergo acclimatization or hardening to prevent transplanting shock. To do this, you can gradually withdraw watering or gradually increase the exposure of the seedlings to sunlight to prepare them in their field environment. And of course, after planting your seedlings, just to make sure that we are all safe, always wash your hands before and after gardening, especially during this pandemic. So that's our 7 tips and steps in starting your own edible landscape garden. But that's not all. We will not end there. To get more excited, I will share with you some of the edible landscape design ideas that you can do in your own home. So these are the designs that presented by Doc Dindo earlier, included in our edible landscaping kit. So we have different designs for different available spaces in different areas. Like for the example, this one is for balcony garden. Okay, we have, we're in a 4 by 1.5 meter area. You can plant 11 plant species like sile, okra, tomato, and eggplant. And still create an aesthetic that we want. For small spaces like this one, we can use vertical spaces mostly to grow our plants using shelves and trellises. And another design is for pocket garden. In this 8 square meter area, we already planted 8 plant species using shelves and trellises. Like we have here trellises in our samsam ping and even cucumber, and leafy vegetables like lettuce, pechay, and others. And then another design, we have here in a container garden or in a rooftop setting. It's a which uses 4 by 4 meter squared area. All right, so for larger areas, you can adopt this design using which we already uses 25 species of plants in different planting containers. And then last design from our kit is the community garden for a much larger spaces. You can use this design for your community gardens. If you have vacant spaces in your community, you can develop that into this. That aside from planting edible crops, you can also use the space for leisure and relaxation. And then aside from those different designs from the kit, we can also do thematic gardens in your area. So you can have like herb garden or salad garden or even sinigang garden. And if the space is limited, you can use a vertical and square foot garden. And that's it. I hope you learned something today that will make you productive and excited tomorrow. So what are you waiting for? Start your own edible landscape garden at home. Tara, mag-edible landscaping na.
Thank you very much, Professor Brian. We really did learn so much from your presentation, very detailed, step by step. And, of course, a lot of things stuck, like really stayed with me, like having my own sinigang garden. Diba ang ganda nun? Punta ka lang sa likod. Completos recados na, no? But my quick question before we move on to the next speaker, Professor Brian, ano yung pinakamadaling unang edible plant na magandang itanim para, like people like me who aren't very good at planting, we don't really have that green thumb, as you call it, hindi naman ma-disappoint.
Okay, so for those beginners, I recommend if you want to plant from seed, you plant leafy vegetables like petchay and lettuces. So these are very easy to maintain and easy to grow, and in less than or maybe in about 1 month, you can harvest your own petchay or lettuces in your backyard.
Thank you, Professor Brian, and please stay on. I'd love to ask you later if you could help me put my lumpia garden together naman, fresh lumpia garden. So we look forward to speaking with you at the Q&A.
Thank you.
We now move on to our third speaker. Our third esteemed speaker leads many organizations in the green industry. Among them is president of the Philippine Association of Plant Tissue Culture and Biotechnology, president of the Federation of Plant Science Association of the Philippines, chairman of the UP Los Baños Landscape Management Committee, and member of the National Seed Industry Council, Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries Standards, and CAFS Vegetable and Ornamental Research and Development Team. A well-known authority in the field, he has served as consultant in various edible landscape development projects, consultant and lead designer for the Medicinal Landscape Garden at the Department of Science and Technology of the National Capital Region, and is a well-known participant of the Edible Landscape Exhibits and permanent judge of the Philippine Orchid Society Landscape Booth Competition. Speaking on the topic of taking care of your edible plants, please welcome Professor Ryan Tayobong from the Institute of Crop Science at the College of Agriculture and Food Science in UP Los Baños.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ms. Tessa and the Port. Thank you for that warm introduction on my background. And for today, I'll be discussing some tips on how to grow and maintain your edible landscape. So, ang kagandahan nito, from the start, our project leader already introduced to you the concept of edible landscaping. You have now the edge on knowing what is the difference between edible landscape and an ordinary landscape. And then Prof. Brian has given a deeper understanding on how to decide on what types of plants and how to design these in your space. So for my part, I'll be discussing on how to maintain and hopefully answer some of your common questions on how to grow up to harvesting of your crop. So I'll be presenting some, can you see my slide? I'll be sharing my slide about, okay. Can you see my slide now? Okay na. Okay, so for my part, I'll be discussing some plant care tips and tricks for your edible plants. So after deciding what type of plants to place in your edible landscape, it's also important to learn and to appreciate how to manage our garden. So ito yung isa sa minsan na pinaka-common problem natin in our hardscape or in our garden, no? Mahilig tayong magtanim, pero sometimes we lack the experience and also the confidence on how to handle these plants in the garden. So first, after knowing what type of plants you want to incorporate in your landscape, the first thing is to determine their requirement in terms of water. So majority, almost all of our plants require ample amount of water depending on their rate of growth. So for watering your plants, you can water early in the morning, late in the afternoon, or when needed. The most common question is when and how much. So for when, we can use our finger to determine how much water is already been given in the plant. So for every day, while monitoring the growth and also looking upon the beauty of your garden, you just insert your finger on the ground and see how much moist or wet the soil is. Kapag particles will adhere on your finger, so medyo i-delay natin yung pagditanim or pagdidilig. Pero kapag tuyo yung kamay natin, nararamdaman natin that no part of the soil adheres or stick to our finger, that's the time we have to water our plants. And also, very careful in identifying the requirements of the plant. So meron mga halaman talaga that would require much water compared to others. So at the start, you do your research. So madali naman ngayon. So and also I recommend to join groups so you can share and learn from their experiences on times and amount of water to be applied on your plants. So majority, yung mga leafy vegetable natin, solanaceous or fruit vegetable, they require amount of water. So you can water them early in the morning or late in the afternoon. So one common question din, di ba, lagi tinatanong, pwede ba akong magdilig tuwing tanghali? Okay, mapapasma ba talaga yung halaman ko kapag nagdilig? So monitor the growth of your plant and then speak to your plant. So your plant will give sign kapag kailangan nila ng tubig even though tanghali. So they will wilt, and that's a sign that you have to apply water. So when applying water kapag noontime, be sure lang na yung temperature of water is almost the same as the temperature of your soil. Huwag masyadong mainit, huwag din masyadong malamig para hindi mapasma yung term natin for our practice. Next is make sure your plants have at least 8 hours of sunlight exposure. So Professor Brian already discussed about microclimatic condition. So at the start, during planning, you have to determine on what spaces and the characteristic of your spaces of your garden. So that you can now determine anong area yung exposed for 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, anong area yung less than 6 hours of sunlight. Some of the mistakes we are doing kasi regardless of exposure of sunlight, nagtatanim tayo. Okay? So hindi natin na-meet yung minimum requirement of the plant in terms of sunlight exposure, which is very important. At yung isa sa pinaka-critical for a better growth of the plant. Okay? So for edibles, majority of our edibles requires 8 hours of sunlight. Pero yung ibang tips lang, no, for mga plantita and plantita, some of our ornamental plants are shade loving. Minsan naman talaga, kailangan nila less exposure, pero kailangan maluwanag yung paligid. But going back to edible, lahat halos ng choices natin for edible crops would require 8 hours of sunlight. So meron tayong mga limited number of plants na pwedeng pumasok for less than 8 hours or they can tolerate shaded condition. Pero for some, halos lahat, yung nasa pinakbet natin, yung nasa lumpia garden ni Ma'am Tessa later, would also require 8 hours of sunlight. So yung iba, after analyzing the microclimatic condition of the site, you have to choose what type of crop, and then you can also do some innovation in order to increase yung light intensity. Some are using grow lights in order to provide more sunlight or more light exposure to the plants. Yung iba naman, they are trying to have this kind of trellis design kung saan yung dulo ng trellis natin will be exposed to more sunlight condition. Or we can do mobile garden kung saan for a season or time in period, kung saan pwede natin i-move yung ating garden in order to have more exposure. Next is use of natural or organic fertilizer and pesticides. So under the recommendation of edible landscaping team, we highly recommend to use natural or organic fertilizer. And I know majority of our household wives and community would also love to use natural and organic because of some ideas regarding the use of chemical ones. But hindi ko na masyadong i-discuss yun dito. Pero dito, ang kagandahan doon sa natural and organic, syempre, it is safe, and at the same time, you can use materials na pwedeng makita sa bahay natin. And in terms of sustainability, we can use yung ating mga byproducts, kitchen byproducts, or kaya naman coming from preparation of your meal to be used for organic fertilizer and pesticides. So there are some researches showing that it is effective in producing better growth and at the same time combating some diseases, pests and diseases. So some of these are FPJ. So hindi ito yung artist natin. So we have fermented plant juice kung saan we are using plant parts in order to extract chlorophyll, more on the nitrogen and magnesium to boost the growth of our plant during vegetative growth. And then we have FFJ, fermented fruit juice. So ano naman ang kukuha natin from the fruit juice? So yung mga overripe fruit can be fermented in order to use the extract as source of NP and K and more on potassium and phosphorus in order to have better quality of the fruit. And also we have vermicompost or compost. So at your own house or in your garden, you can create your own vermicompost and compost para we also have readily available source of fertilizer. Always remember, kasi minsan ang wrong connotation then we just apply one-time application of fertilizer to our plants. No. So parang pagkain po ito, dapat habang lumalaki yung halaman natin, we have to continuously feed our plants. So kung meron kang vermicompost or compost na readily available, FFJ and FPJ, we can sustain the better growth of our plant. So always remember lang, kapag gumamit tayo ng natural or organic pesticides, FFJ or mga concoctions natin, we also have to determine the right time. Early morning po yung pag-a-apply or late afternoon. Hindi po tayo nag-a-apply during noon time kasi po nasisira yung active ingredient ng ating organic pesticide. Next naman is in terms of protecting your plant. Isa sa pinaka-common pa ng problema, not just for the health, but also for the enemy of our crop. So, inalagaan natin, pinaganda natin, but without monitoring the properties and the characteristic and population of our pests, pwede tayo magkaroon ng problema in the future. So, they can attack in every stage of growth of our crop. Meron yan during seedling, vegetative, flowering, up to fruiting. So, one practice that we also recommend during fruiting and before harvesting is the bagging of fruits. So, literally, ibabag natin yung fruit natin with plastic, paper, or net in order to protect them from pest damages. Okay. And in the concept of edible landscaping, bagging of fruits can also increase the interest, okay, of our plant. So, pwede kang gumamit ng colorful bags, colorful papers, or be creative in using materials so that it can be an accent to your garden. So, yung fruit crop mo or yung vegetable crop mo, you're protecting the fruit and at the same time, you're adding more art on the garden. Next is practice crop rotation. Make your cropping calendar. This should be done during the planning stage, okay? And then should be continuously applied during the maintenance part. So ano ba yung sinasabi natin na crop rotation? So from the term rotation, we plant one species, one genus of crop, or one family of crop for a certain place, and then after one cropping season, we have to replace them with other. So ang nangyayari dito, kung talungay na nakatanim, pag after harvesting, we change the genus or the family on that type or space, tatanaman natin sila either leguminous or leafy vegetable. So bakit kailangan natin ng crop rotation? It is important to practice crop rotation in order to control the pest. Kasi with different families, they have different types of pests. So kunyari kung the same family itinanim natin at the same space at the continuous time, possible na mag-increase yung population ng pest natin. For example, talong ang tinanim natin ngayon and then next cropping season, talong pa din. So yung pest natin will be continuously increasing their population. Pero pag pinalta natin talong ngayon, next season ginawa natin mais, malilito yung pest natin. Nasaan yung talong? Okay? So it will gradually decrease yung pest population natin therefore decreasing yung negative effect of our pests. And at the same time, we can restore the fertility of the soil. So during crop rotation, in planning of your crop rotation, always include leguminous crop. So ano ba yung mga leguminous crop? We have peas, beans, sitaw, bataw, patane, okay? So dun sa crop rotation ninyo, the work of your legumes is to increase the fertility of the soil. Not just to increase, but to restore, okay, the fertility of the soil. Kasi yung ibang other crops natin would continuously feed on the nutrients found in the soil. Pero yung pag tinaniman natin siya ng legumes, meron siyang capability to convert and to restore the fertility of our soil. And lastly, set up your vermicomposting bin, peat, and rainwater harvesting. So edible landscaping, it's not just for aesthetic. It's not just for one-time application of a practice in order to have a certain time for yield. Ang halaga din, we have to look upon sustainability, continuity of maintaining your garden. And it's very important not just to plan for the design of the garden for the crop, but also to design a space for your source of fertilizer and other compost. So, pwede tayo maglagay ng vermicomposting bin. Madali lang naman ito with the use of worms. So, lagay tayo ng lagay dyan ng ating mga biodegradable materials, and always look upon lang to monitor yung moisture and temperature nung ating vermicomposting bin. As much as possible, ay at of natural or environmental level lang, hindi masyadong iinit, hindi masyadong lalamig, and then hindi rin masyadong waterlog yung condition. Kasi ayaw na ayaw nung ating mga bulate ng mainit at waterlog yung condition. Okay? And weekly, you can have some layer on the top na pwede nating ma-harvest as your vermicompost. Okay? And then for rainwater and harvester, in order to reduce, to cut yung bill din natin in water, no, using our faucet, so we can also collect rainwater. So itong rainwater nito, this is safe for plants. Okay? So you have a good source of rainwater to apply in your garden. So there are many other special practices depending on the type of crop, but itong 6 tips and tricks natin is one of the most common, okay, application of practice in order to provide better growth and yield. And always remember that part of planning of your edible landscape is also monitoring the growth and planning for the maintenance part. So with that, I end my presentation and have a more fruitful gardening after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ryan, for giving us conventional tips on taking care of edible plants. I just have a callback to Tessa's question earlier at the very start of our forum. She was asking, well, basically, yung makahiya plant ba edible din ba yun? Pwede ba siyang pang tinola or something?
So, in my experience, and hindi pa po ako naka-encounter ng paggamit ng makahiya as for edibles. I don't know if one of our members or any from the participants can also share the experience if they have this experience of eating makahiya. Pero ang nakikita ko lang talaga in other countries, especially in temperate, these are prized ornamental plants, but not as an edible plant.
Okay, so I guess Tessa will just have to make do with her lumpia garden for the meantime. Thank you. Please stay on board, and we're going to field some more, even more sensible questions later on. So thank you for that, and we'll get back to you in a bit.
Thank you, Doc.
Our fourth speaker is a content creator and entrepreneur, none other than Angie Mead King. She is also a car enthusiast, a blogger, farmer, and a transgender woman who is concerned about the plight of our planet and is passionate about doing something about it. She currently lives in Manila with her wife of 9 years, Joey Mead King, who was a model and mentor, co-judge of the TV show Asia's Next Top Model. Angie is an animal advocate and has promoted the adoption of orphaned or abandoned animals rather than buying them. And in her farm, she operates an apiary of local bees, local species of bees. As some of you might know, globally there is a danger for species to be being wiped out. So she's doing her part in being able to give back to the environment. She is a sports buff, and she's also into kiteboarding, wakeboarding, gymnastics, and parkour. So aside from her many interests, she also is very much involved in businesses. And these are restaurants, hotels, and car shops. She started in the Philippines actually with a very good corporate social program for social HIV awareness. And this was 14 years ago through her hotel chain, Victoria Court. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, DeFort. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me clearly. I will share my screen so I can get into my presentation.
I think our plantitos and plantitas are excited because now we ramp up the operations from their home and backyard gardens. We can now expand into mini farms or even to their own personal, your little empire.
Well, thank you so much. And being the fourth presenter along with the other professors, it's like I feel underqualified. So I'm just going to share what we've been doing here at King Tower Farm. Good afternoon, everyone in the Manila Times. Thank you for tuning in and giving me a chance to present unconventional farming. Unconventional farming because, as you can see on the left, we do vertical farming, and on the right, we have the aquaponic pond system that we're building. So I'm an unconventional farmer because I love cars, and I understand that this is part of the global warming issue. So my way to give back is to get into farming. Also, if we follow the IPCC report, we all know that global warming is getting worse and worse, which means planting and severe rain and severe sun is going to be a big problem in the future. That's why food security is definitely a topic and something we need to act upon today. So disclaimer, I'm not an expert in any of the fields. I didn't study any of this. I just learned a lot from videos online, books, and obviously our trade partners that have been teaching me for the last 5 years. That said, I will go first to our first topic, which is tower gardening. Tower gardening uses aeroponic technology. I pulled this information from my supplier. So aeroponic technology uses 95% less water and 90% less space because we are growing vertically. We can't use any chemicals or pesticides in the system because you'll end up killing the plants also. And the technology is also a big benefit to urban consumers because you can set up this system anywhere you want. And the advantage of our system is that it really has the ability to grow nutrient-dense produce, and you can have it beside or in the city, which means you can buy very, very fresh vegetables that don't need to travel so far. So aeroponics is a process of growing plants in an air or mist environment without the use of soil or any aggregate medium. So a brief background on King Tower Farm and why I got into it. We established the farm in 2019, and the technology was acquired from True Garden in the USA. And our first main agenda was actually to produce flowers to feed our bees, because the bees are very hard to take care of and very hard to expand the community. So we ended up doing the system because it was the fastest way we saw to grow flowering products and other vegetables that they can, share food with. Also, from my research, it seemed to be the most affordable, scalable, commercial-based system that I have seen. And they were very quick to reply and give all the information needed for us to make our decision. So it all starts with a seed. Here is our growing trays, and the growing trays we use rock wool. Rock wool is like woven rock that's spun into fibers that the plants can grow in. And what happens here is after we plant it for a few weeks, we let it germinate and then get into this height that you see here. And once the roots start peeking out, that's when we know we can transfer it into the tower system. So here are a few samples of the vegetables that we've been growing. over the past few years, we've actually been experimenting with different varieties, different seeds, and just trying to figure out what is the limitations of the system. And as you can see, we've grown white eggplant, which is, when you first see it, you're like, this is unreal, because you're like, what happened to this eggplant? It's not purple. And on the right, we actually had some mild success growing lavender. So lavender is very hard to grow in the Philippines because of our weather, but so far we were able to grow a few plants, and a few of them actually gave us flowers, but it wasn't 100% successful, but just to show the variety that we can grow. And as you can see here, our talong, our upo, our pechay, our wing bean, and our other crops, and none of this have pesticides and any herbicides. So brief explanation of how the towers work. As you can see in the green base over there, the green base actually houses a water pump. And through the pod system, which is the center tube that goes up, there's a center tube that pumps the water to the top cap. And the top cap actually drains down and trickles and wets the roots of the system. The system turns on for 12 minutes and it switches off for 3 minutes, allowing the plants to take up oxygen also through the root system. So some of the pros that I've written down for you guys is, the tower system can be set up absolutely anywhere. It could be indoor, outdoor, rooftop, balcony, basement. Obviously, with indoor setups, you just have to provide grow lights, but basically the system works in that design, where I think the best design system is going to be a greenhouse system, because you can control all the factors, temperature, humidity, moisture, and also control the pests. Also, because it is vertical farming, it has a higher yield per square meter over just basic flat gardening. And because we're stacking the pods up to the maximum is like 13 pod height, we're able to multiply land use by roughly 5 times, if I'm not mistaken. And then, as I said, it is advantageous if you do build a greenhouse, because you can control unnecessary variables that might affect your plant growth. And we only use one nutrition formula. Unlike hydroponic systems, if you guys are familiar, you have a formula for leafy veg and a formula for fruiting veg. With our tower system, we only have one nutrient formula to grow most of the things that we need. Also, from my experience, it is faster and bigger for the produce growth, and I haven't seen any other farm that matches like the size of crops and vegetables that we grow. And lastly, it saves a lot of water compared to conventional farming, because the water is recycled through the system. Even after 4 months, when we need to empty out the lower basin, we actually just dilute that in more water and we use it to water the garden, so nothing is wasted. And obviously, some of the cons is the expensive upfront cost. Each of the towers cost roughly $38,500, and we're very, very dependent on importing nutrients. And also, it's very dependent on electricity. So if the power goes out and you don't have a backup power system or generator, basically, because there's no soil medium to keep moisture, the roots will dry out and the plants will wither and die. Also, every few months, it does need maintenance to clean the root systems from the pump, so it doesn't plug the pump system. Also, we just remove any algae that's growing as well. And the limitations are, it doesn't work with certain crops like coffee, rice, root crops, trees, any trees or fruit, vegetables with big roots, and melons for some reason. And the pests absolutely love it. This is a photo of our tower system before we actually put the UV plastic over it. Over here, we have roughly 240 towers in our peak capacity. And the design looks so good on the first concept, but eventually we realized that the split design along with the multi-levels is actually an inconvenience for farmers and the maintenance aspect. Which brings me to another photo of our produce. And then, as you can see, we've actually started focusing more on hardier vegetables. So this is what the tower farm looks like now. We actually ended up tearing it down recently. And we've decided to do this because the pest problem is very severe. Plus, we wanted to give more efficiency for harvesting, planting, and then cleaning the surrounding area in general. So our basic design before was just to put UV plastic on a makeshift greenhouse. But because the sides were open, we have all the pests coming in, which is terrible for us. So our future design actually involves something like this. This is a sample photo I got from the internet. Agrivoltaic future is basically using agrivoltaic or solar panels to sort of give the greenhouse partial shade. So what happens here, it actually acts like Venetian blinds, where the crops still get sun, but they also have a chance to get partial shade. So the problem is with our system, if the plants are in extreme heat all the time, plants also transpire, which is like perspiration. So because it transpires and it uses our expensive nutrient solution, we want to limit the transpiration so that we can save also on the nutrient solution, which is why we're studying this system. And I have a few partners who are sort of trying to help us figure this out, but I haven't seen this done in the Philippines, and I'm hoping someone can shed light on this through this seminar. And in summary, for the vertical tower farm, as I was mentioning, yes, we decided to take down the whole system to reinvent it to, I would say, version 3 already of our design. And initially, we're only running 9 pods because the wind here in the farm is crazy. And at 9 pods, sometimes the towers fall over during typhoons. So now that we're actually enclosing everything, we can stack it all the way till 13 pods, which means the previous photo I showed you guys where it spanned almost the whole side of the farm, we can now compress it to a smaller space because we're making it taller. So basically a higher vertical system. And also the pests love it so much that we lose up to 50% of the leafy produce to the pests. Also the problem, even if they don't attack the actual vegetable, if they attack the leaves are the ones that give the vegetable energy to get bigger. And if the leaves are all holed up or eaten, then it makes the vegetable growing a little slower also. And then we also noticed that we wanted to start growing more hardier vegetables in the system, some vegetables which don't expire too fast, so it's easier to sell, transport. We don't need a refrigerated van to bring it down to Manila. So we ended up doing, tomatoes, eggplant, and the hardier stuff where we can keep it longer. And my presentation is stuck. Oh, okay. So my next topic will be the aquaponic pond. And aquaponics is a system of aquaculture where the fish waste is actually used to feed the plants to a hydroponic system. So it's basically a combination of fish farming and hydroponics. So in a basic nutshell, as you can see here, the IBC container in the back is where your fish are going to stay. It goes through a filtration system, which is on the back side of the photo, where there's a bead filter, which actually removes the solid waste, and it just leaks out the dissolved solids through the blue drum, and then the blue drum is now feeding the grow tubes, which is through an NFT system, which is nutrient film technique. And then after that, it is plowed back into the blue drum, which is then fed back into the aquarium. So this is a closed loop system where it allows the symbiosis of both plants and fish to help each other to achieve balance. So background for aquaponics for myself is I actually started dabbling with aquaponics in 2008. I built a small aquarium style system where the grow beds were just on top of the little aquarium and it just drains straight back through. And I had this in my second floor bedroom. And we were actually getting questions from our neighbors. Why do we have talong and bitter gourd and kangkong growing out of the window? And I was explaining what I was doing, and everyone was amazed. And even till this day, I'm very amazed with how the fish and the plants help each other survive. And that's why I put here, it's a symbiosis of these two elements, which is sort of copying nature in a way where you have the rivers and the streams, which act as the same principles as the aquaponics that we know today. Also, experimenting with this method is it's a way to explore if I can grow the leafy veg in a cheaper option than using the vertical tower system. And we're also tapping a local team to help me achieve this dream. So what we're doing differently with our aquaponic system is instead of using a continuous flow system where it's just looped around and around, we actually decoupled the system where we will take the fish waste and actually measure it before we put it into the grow system. That way, if there's a spike in any of the issues on each of the systems, we're able to capture it without killing both. So normally, if you have a spike in something in an aquaponic system, you might end up killing both the fish and the plants, which I've also experienced in my experimentation. Also, because our system is an aquaponic pond, I decided to build a nice water feature, which is going to be at the end. As you can see here, this is how we started the system. We knew already that we were going to build a pond-style system rather than using IBC containers, just to make it feel more natural in a way. And because we're using pond liner, we have to cut the embankment to about 45 degrees so that it doesn't collapse inward. This is mid-construction where we have the pond liner in already, and we decided to build sort of a terraces style on the side of the hill so that we can grow. We can put the grow tubes. Just another photo showing you guys the work progress. This is, I'd say, 90% done already, where we have the NFT beds sitting on the hills. The green and blue house that you see there, that's where the pumps are and the filtration systems are located. And then on the left will be the water feature, where I'll have sort of a stream style babbling brook that I'm really excited about. So some of the pros of the aquaponic system is it can provide you with both fish and vegetables. Siyempre, not everyone just wants to eat vegetables. Some people do still like meat. And this would be a good alternative because you can grow different types of fish. And obviously the most basic fish are like the tilapias and the sea bass and some of the shellfish. The pro also for me is the only input is electricity, seeds, and fish food. But for fish food, we're actually planning to grow our own superworms, black soldier fly larvae, and just trying to keep it as organic as possible. Aquaponic systems also are very highly sustainable in my view, and it conserves also a lot of water because none of the water is thrown away. You basically always end up just topping up water. But here in the farm, we actually have been collecting rainwater for almost 30 years. So we don't have any deep well here or any Nawasa water supply. So ever since we were kids, we were actually collecting rainwater already. So I'm very used to that practice. And also in aquaponics, you cannot use pesticides or fertilizers because you will kill either the fish or you will kill either the plants. Also, the system can be set up as well indoors and outdoors. And then for indoor, as long as you have lights, then it will work. Some of the cons of this system is also high initial investment cost. I would say the aquaponic system is not as expensive as the vertical tower system that we're doing, but it is still a very upfront cost that you need to deal with. But once you spend for it, and the maintenance is just going to be easy already. Sometimes in smaller aquaponic systems, it is tricky to balance the system in terms of pH, dissolved solids, ammonia levels, and there's actually more technical stuff that are involved in balancing the water to the plants and the volume of fish to the number of plants that you're using. And yes, it does need technical training, which is why I've hired actually consultants to help us with that. And also it's very energy intensive because of all the pumps. You always need oxygenation pumps for the fish. You need the pumps to circulate the nutrient film or the water through the NFT beds. And then the quarterly maintenance is required also so that you make sure that none of the tubes get clogged and you just clean any algae out. And in summary, so the aquaponic system isn't live yet, and hopefully by September, we're going to go live. Because of the lockdowns, it's been so hard for us to get the consultants here to finish the project. But we did a dry run already recently, and we saw the flow, and now we just need to balance the beds because some of the water gets stuck in some of the channels. So just sort of small details left, and then we can turn it on in September. And I think pest will still be a huge concern for this area because, as I mentioned, in the King Tower farm side, we're experiencing so many pests. And even though we've done the chilies in water fermented for a few days and then you spray it, it works for a bit and then it doesn't work. We've tried neem oil, we've tried all these other organic solutions, but I think the best solution talaga is to close the system off to the outside world and just do manual pollination for the vegetables. And then, yes, we're planning to grow tilapia, sea bass, and possibly shellfish as well. And then, because it's an NFT system, we don't have bell siphons, which can fail or get clogged. And then also, we're thinking of introducing the agrivoltaic setup as well in that side of the farm. And that's it. That's my presentation. I hope I hit the 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Angie. It's really such an impressive thing that you've got going there. I'm sure, your panelists are just as impressed as we are. We want to congratulate you for, going that far and wide and wanting to balance your, your love for cars vis-a-vis, global warming, the issue on global warming. But I guess my quick question is, what has, growing, vegetables and now fish and all these things, what has it done for you personally?
I got into growing vegetables because I actually have a lot of food allergies. And growing vegetables allowed me to control my diet, know what goes into the plants. Just because it's a vegetable doesn't mean it's healthy. If there's chemicals and Roundup and all these other toxins that are in the soil or in what the plants are taking up, then you're eating that. It's transferring to you. So I wanted to be able to control where my food source was coming from. That's why I got into it. And then I got hooked onto the bee, being a bee farmer, or what do you call it, the apiarist? So I got hooked on doing that, and I realized that I needed to plant way more things in the farm for me to be able to grow the bees, because growing and harvesting your own honey is such a wonderful experience. And I'm hoping that people can experience this because I believe that, food security is going to be a very, very, very big issue in the future. And actually during the pandemic, during the lockdown, we noticed already that the food supply trucks were having a harder time to get into Manila. That's why globally they were throwing food away because they couldn't even get it into the city because of the multiple lockdowns. So I do believe that this is the future, and I'm glad that you guys are doing this free seminar for everybody.
Sharing all of that with us, so much meaningful stuff. Just from that one presentation, and your revelations to us about needing to eat better, and really looking forward to fulfilling food sustainability for more people. Thank you, and please do stay with us. We have a lot of questions that have already come for you, Angie. Thank you once again. We'll see you later. Thank you.
See you later.
Moving on, our next esteemed guest is a proud and passionate agripreneur and organic farmer. He is concurrently director of the Organic Producers Trade Association of the Philippines and is credited for developing the first certified pure organic fertilizer in the Philippines in 1991. In 2003, he also founded Flower Depot, a cut flower farm which sells retail flowers online, and later Down to Earth Philippines, a regenerative farm with an e-commerce website selling healthy, grass-fed, and free-range beef, as well as native chicken and dairy. Recently, Down to Earth came up with a biodynamic composting technology designed for food systems using biodegradable waste for rural and urban components. This notably led to the Tower Garden, an urban compact plant growing system that composts biodegradable waste. The system has since won first prize twice in BPI Foundation Pinag Awards for Best Social Enterprise in 2019 and 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nicolo Aberasturi.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here, Manila Times. I hope I'll be able to share some of my knowledge with everybody and inspire more to grow their own food today. Can I have my presentation, please? Yes. Hello. Hello, everyone. I think am I back?
Yes, you are back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Des. Yeah, I got cut off here there for a while. I'm Nicolo Aberasturi and I run Down to Earth now. So we look at food production and from a holistic point of view. So whenever we plant a garden in an urban and a rural area, we always look at the environment and how the gardens can work together with the community and the areas and the people around it. No? So it's a holistic approach. Next slide, please. Yes, okay. So we have to look at, when we plant a garden or a farm in the Philippines, we have to look at its very unique landscape. Okay, so what makes the Philippines unique is more than 60% of our arable land is actually sloping. No? So when you have sloping terrain and you combine very high rainfall, which we have, the Philippines has a rainfall of about 80 to 80 inches a year. Most countries would be running around 20 inches. So when you do a lot of tillage in a sloping area, this is like commercial farming, you're exposing the soil, you lose a lot of topsoil that took about thousands of years to develop. So what we have right now, after many, many years of commercial farming, is really very degraded soil. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a map of the soil degradation in the world. And you look at us there, it's practically all degraded. No, so you in other countries still have some slightly degraded, some are still good, but the Philippines over there most of our areas are already fully degraded, and I think that is one of the reasons why we lag behind a lot of the we are lagging in terms of production compared to our neighbors all over the world. Next slide, please. Okay, so as consumers, we craft a little bit of this world we want to live in every day when we eat. So we vote with our fork. No, this is a quote from Michael Pollan, no, famous author, and he came up with this very famous food ink that has been viewed many times all over the world. And he said that our food choices serve as a mirror of our values. So through the food that we demand, not that we eat, we actually create this culture that we are living in right now. So yeah, so next slide please, and next slide. Okay, so when we look at the existing food landscape, all over the world, a very big chunk of this food is actually being thrown away. So if we look at food waste, as a country, it is one of the biggest polluters. It's actually the second or the third biggest polluter in the world, at 8% contributor to global gas emissions. So a lot of this food gets thrown away, and in our landfills, it contributes, as it degrades, it mixes up with a lot of our plastic waste, and it pollutes the air. So when we address a garden, we also have to address this issue. We have to try to come up with a way wherein we are growing a garden, but at the same time, we're also cleaning the environment. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so our system is a closed loop system. This system we've slowly developed over the years, coming from our composting background. And we've managed in the last 20-30 years to work with different kinds of materials, whether it's urban or rural. In rural landscape, it's mostly a lot of yard clippings, a lot of grass, a lot of branches, a lot of farmyard manure. And then in the urban areas, bulk of it is really food waste. So there's a lot of food waste that's being thrown away, and this, we believe, is something that we have to use to be able to produce food, for it to be a closed loop system. Yes, next slide, please. So what we did, this passion of ours, we actually tried it on our own home. So we were able to move to a place with a yard that was about 700 square meters. And here, using a lot of food waste that we collected from our own vegetable farm and from the nearby places that was close to us, a lot of yard clippings, we tried to grow a garden in this 700 square meters. And to our surprise, after a year of lagging our produce, we were able to harvest about 2 tons of fruits and vegetables, our own eggs, and we even had a little bit of chicken and rabbit meat that went with this. And this is just fed through the waste that we've collected in our community. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a peak of our production. So I believe this is something that we want to share with a lot of the Filipino families. It became a family bonding thing. We would go around, collect some fruits and vegetables and our eggs, and then we would prepare lunch and dinner with this. Yeah. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay. So this is a garden that we believe should be an ideal tropical garden in the Philippines. So it's a combination of indigenous fruits and vegetables, and of course we also have our annuals. So in this setup that we did, we could not have gotten the produce that we got from a garden without the help of perennial local indigenous vegetables. So a lot of these are actually vegetables that have been thriving in the Philippines and evolved here in our tropical climate for many, many years. So if we notice, next slide, please. This is one of the biggest problems, I think, in our agriculture. is because 90%, no, I think at least 90% of the recipes that we use in the Philippines is actually recipes using ingredients that's coming from cold countries. So we have not really developed a lot of recipes using our own indigenous perennial vegetables, no? Because if you're living in a tropical country like us here in the Philippines, no, we don't have winter. So if you look at the edible fruits and vegetables that evolve here, they just keep on growing. No, we don't really have to plant them all the time, like we do annuals. But what recipes do we use? If you look at bulk of the recipes that we have, it's actually American food with rice, Spanish food with rice, Italian food with rice. We also eat a lot of Japanese food and Chinese food, no? But all these recipes from all these temperate countries are using annual vegetables. That's why bulk of the vegetables that we have in the Philippines are actually grown in cold areas. So you have Baguio, Bukidnon, Tagaytay areas, no? But what about the rest of the areas in the Philippines? So we can only do bahay kubo, no? Which gives the farmers, the bulk of our farmers, very little access to the type of vegetables that the market wants. So I believe we have to have a mix, and we have to try to develop a lot of our own recipes using our own perennial tropical vegetables. Okay, so what are these? So we have here a list, no? Next slide, please. So these are some tropical perennial crops that we have. Number one is malunggay. No, I mean malunggay. You plant it one time. Once it starts to give you leaves, it will constantly give you something every week on a regular basis. You don't have to plant it again. This is like you know, if you're coming from a cold country, this is actually a crop that is a high producer, no? If they only have this, but you know, we have this here, but we just take it for granted, no? So what are the other crops? No, we have water leaf spinach, talilon. We have gabi, we have sayote, we have alugbati, pako-pako, we have bataw, we have patani. So the song Bahay Kubo actually has a lot of these vegetables. So common thing with a lot of our perennial vegetables, you don't have to plant it all the time. When you plant it one time, it should give you something when it becomes mature enough to provide, no? Another very good quality of this, since it thrives, it evolved in our tropical climates, it's so used to the shade that is given by the trees around us, no? So a lot of these vegetables that are indigenous, they're actually can easily be grown in shaded areas, no? Which is very common, a common problem in urban areas, no? Because a lot of our urban gardens are beside tall walls, buildings that give a lot of shade. So annual crops really do not do very well in these conditions. Okay, so we have next slide, please. So we have another list of fruits that will constantly give us something. So a good tropical garden, if you have the space, we should take advantage of this and really try to plant as much of these perennial fruits that we have. Yeah, okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just to show you a few projects that we did, this is a rural component. So we have a very common development in around the metro, no, or around the urban areas. We usually bring in heavy equipment, bulldozers, to really scrape that soil and level it, no. So what happens is we lose a lot of that topsoil, and it has to be regenerated. So we bring in our technology, our composting technology, and we plan a set of plants which is a combination of indigenous and annuals, and we grow a garden. So this is a before and after photo, no? So 3-4 months after, this small area of 1,000 square meters was harvesting about 25 kilo a week fruits and vegetables. Yes, okay. Next slide, please. So we also came up, when we were doing workshops, we found out that a lot of our people who attended our workshops did not really have access to land. No, they only had space in their balcony, their front yard, and if they had a backyard, it was quite a small space. No, so we tried to come up with a compact system that also carries our technology, that also composts biodegradable waste. At the same time, it also produces its own seeds, and in a very small 2 square feet of space. No, so we came up with this worm tower gardens because it has a vermiculture system that we installed inside the towers that is fed biodegradable waste, and these worms, they break it down and then they feed the plants. No, so you produce your own organic fertilizer. It also has a basin that is underneath it where you can easily trap and recycle and reuse a lot of the water and the tea that the tower produces. No, and this tea is very rich. It can be an organic pesticide and fungicide. Yeah. Yes. Next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So we did workshops on this, teaching people how to come up with the gardens, how to start their own backyard farm. Yeah. So we also, next slide, please. We also are working with some public schools, wherein we have a clustering project with them. So we set up the gardens, and we have trained them to not only produce vegetables, but to produce their own seeds for distribution to their community. So when we come in, we bring in open pollinated plants, all of it, no? And the beauty with open pollinated vegetables is you are giving the owners or the farmers or gardeners that ability to be able to produce her own seeds. So constant production and constant planting is already happening in the schools that we partnered with. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so we also work with far communities distributing our seeds, and then we try to work with them using social media. And also, this is actually like a virtual setup wherein we try to monitor and provide them technology using the internet. No? Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so producing food for everyone is not really. It sounds like a very big, it's a very big problem, no? But actually, if only 1% of the Filipinos, that's about 1 million Filipinos, with about 1,000 square meter garden, we can actually produce about 66% already of our vegetable requirements and about 100% of our egg requirements. That's how small. That's all it takes, no? So, yeah. So that ends my presentation. Thank you, and I hope we'll be able to answer more questions.
Thank you, Nicolo, for giving us those very, very down-to-earth and yet inspiring words about how we can help develop our own home-based agriculture in our backyards, in our schools. Just a quick question. Is it true that your system, Tower Garden, had won an award with one of the foundations of, was it BPI?
Yeah, yes, we joined the foundation BPI CNAG, and I think we were just there during the right time, no? This was during the lockdowns, and we were the idea of producing food while cleaning the environment. It's actually a triple bottom line. I think that's how we were able to get this.
Very timely indeed. Well, we do have actually a whole number of questions, but we'll get into them after our next speaker first. So please do stay on board, and we'll field some more. Thank you very much. Fifth speaker, we'll be talking about greenhouse at Village Square, Alabang. This ensures a safer and more sustainable sourcing for plants and gardening needs. Our speaker is therefore Graham Coates, the first vice president and head of Mega World Lifestyle Malls. Now, this is the retail and commercial arm of real estate giant Mega World Corporation and the pioneer of the lifestyle mall concept in the country. He is responsible for overseeing the development of Mega World Lifestyle Malls across the country, encompassing leadership in the group's operations, leasing, marketing, and finance. Now, with all that on his plate, he just resorts to planting as a form of relaxation and mind massage. He is a certified plant lover and a hands-on gardener, and has been doing so for more than 30 years in every country that he goes to. So he's been to Asia, Europe, and the United States, planting his own garden. And this love for gardening has largely inspired Mega World Lifestyle Mall's newest innovative property, Greenhouse at Village Square, Alabang. Now, this is the Philippines' first and only plant sanctuary mall, where you have 2 levels, 12,000 square meters, all in one mall for plant lovers. It houses one of the widest selections of plants and gardening needs in more convenient and comfortable air-conditioned indoor settings. So welcome, Graham. Thank you very much for giving us some of your valuable time.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Wow, I've really enjoyed the whole webinar. It's absolutely marvelous, and I'd like to thank all the speakers so far. I've learned so much actually in this short presentation, so thank you very much for that. Thank you, Manila Times, for inviting me. I'm representing the keen amateur gardener here. So I think I've learned more than probably everybody else here today. So as you said, really, I'm just a keen amateur gardener who happens to run a Mega World Lifestyle Malls, and the two have come together, and we've put together a new concept which we believe will tap onto the demand of gardening. I think we have a presentation I'd like to share with you, just to talk about the greenhouse before we start. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So maybe I can start off with a little bit about myself and how I came to be in the Philippines. My name's Graham Coates. I'm British. I've worked all around the world, actually. I've worked in Hong Kong, Singapore, Barbados, America, Indonesia, and for the last 20 years, I've lived and worked in the Philippines, which I regard as my home. I'm a keen gardener. So basically, wherever I've gone, I've always tried to develop gardens where in all the environments I've been at. I would say that most of my gardens are, well, this is my garden in Nasabu, Kauai Cove. And I realized today, after this presentation, I need to do more on the vegetables and sustainability and really try and develop the garden a little bit more. You can see my garden is very focused on beauty, which I think is also important. We haven't really touched on the beauty part of gardening. When I think of gardening, I think of the well-being that it provides and the joy that it sparks. I'm a very passionate gardener. I'm very passionate in everything I do. So when I garden, I find that I can really let out my creative juices. And during this pandemic, we all know how difficult it's been. And the garden for me has been a true refuge for me, both mentally and physically. I tend to go to gardening most weekends. I'm obviously working during the week. And I find that that 1 or 2 days that I can spend in the garden really refreshes my mind and body. I even have started a small Instagram account, care of my 2 daughters, Plantito Graham. And really, it's just a way of just showing and sharing images with people who have similar love for gardens. And that love for gardens merged very well as we developed the greenhouse in Mega World lifestyle molds. During the pandemic, we were challenged in many of our situations. The headlines are here for everyone to see. It was a very trying time for the business world, particularly the malls. You're all aware of the restrictions that were placed on the malls during and are still placed today. And we had to find a way that we could pivot a lot of our malls. We came up with the greenhouse, which is at Village Square, Alabang. And this concept was really born out of the plant pandemic that came about together with the restrictions. I've been gardening 30 years, and it wasn't cool to garden when I first started. But I think now gardening has that cool factor. And I think a lot of people have moved to gardening just purely because it gave them some respite from all the negative and the difficult news that was about. So we at MegaWorld, we realized that our overall riding factor, when we think about our malls, is we want to make happiness a lifestyle. So we wanted to find ways that we could transport that gardening and love of gardening into our malls. The vision for the greenhouse was to create a botanical haven, connecting communities and nurturing happiness and love for nature. A sanctuary for a sustainable and healthy lifestyle, and a trusted source of plants, gardening supplies, and expertise. So that was our brief. But how did we go about doing it? Well, basically, we had to reinvent one of our malls, which was a traditional mall. And we decided that we would become the first mover in this category to create a completely dedicated plant sanctuary, which we call the greenhouse. Now, what is the greenhouse? Well, basically, the goal of the greenhouse is to have all plant supplies under one roof in a mall environment. We have 13,000 square meters of floor space. And this really is a first in the country. It's fully dedicated to all plant lovers. The idea here is that when you enter the greenhouse, you can find all your plant needs under one roof. We have restaurants here also. We have coffee, Starbucks. And so we want to get the customer to enjoy the full experience of the greenhouse. In my hometown of UK, there are many nurseries. We call them nurseries in the UK. And people go there for a day. They have lunch. They plan their gardens. They buy their plant supplies. And it's a whole day experience. We wanted to create that here in the greenhouse. We have 300 different plant varieties. They're all maintained to the correct temperature and humidity. We actually have special areas for plants to go into to get more sunlight. And in this building, we're actually creating a real skylight roofing that will add to the natural light and ventilation for all the plants there. So we really thought about it. We have, I would say, the widest selection of plant varieties catered by a number of the top suppliers in the country, both big and small entrepreneurs, because we also saw this as an opportunity to help the small entrepreneurs in the, because they were equally affected during the pandemic. So when we set this up, we were so surprised and pleasantly surprised that so many plant suppliers wanted to participate. And again, we got their involvement through providing the right environment, putting it all under one roof, and obviously giving them very small rental, because during these times it's quite difficult. But putting it under one roof was really something that they could see would be an opportunity. We have at the moment some 20 to 25 plant merchants who fill up the greenhouse, from pots to plants to tools. And a lot of these plant suppliers were either plant suppliers from Mega World Lifestyle Mall's landscape projects, or particularly in this case, we got a lot of the small plant suppliers from the local community. So we were able to fill them up, help them out, and so far the results have been spectacular. Everyone's happy. Foot traffic is increasing, and we're really looking forward to the end of this current restriction so we can get back to selling more plants as we were when we launched it in August. As I mentioned, everything that you need is under this one roof. You can see the pictures here that we have. And of course, being a mole-based operation, we carry all the safety elements that we would have in our typical mole. We would have them in the greenhouse. In fact, we were awarded the safety seal certification by the local LGU when we opened. And, the safety precautions and the safety protocols are all in place as well. So the idea is that you get the mole experience, but it's full of plants instead of your traditional shops. As part of the advocacy that we're doing, we do a lot of workshop and workstations where people come in and they do talks, and they have different sessions to teach the people how to take care of their plants, how to do propagation, and these are weekly events. So it's not only a venue for people to sell, but it's also a venue where people can go and learn, similar to today. And I would like to think that maybe some of the speakers that were presenting today, I mean, I'm so impressed with the way they put their things together. I'm sure we could arrange that they could come and speak, or have some of their people speak at this location as well. The one thing I learned about gardening is there's so much to learn. That's why hopefully gardeners live a very long age, because you're never at the point where you've learned everything. A garden is a living thing, and one moment you can be on top, the next minute you can have pests, or you can have different elements that are against you. So we really believe that education and doing workshops is really going to be something. Of course, we do partnerships with the Department of Agriculture as well, Department of Trade. We stage regional trade fairs, and we will be having farmers markets there also, where people can buy their local produce. So yeah, we're encouraging all different types of suppliers. And even today, I think I've learned a few more types of suppliers that we could include. But from cut flowers all the way through to greenhouse structures to organic farming, you'll find this all in the greenhouse. So that's the greenhouse. My presentation is quite short, but I just wanted to really, it's inspired me today because I think that what I picked up today really is the passion for gardening is so strong. And I would like to think that we will open more greenhouse type mole across the country. You know, one thing about Mega World Lifestyle Moles is that we do have a lot of open spaces, and we are encouraging alfresco dining, and we believe there are opportunities for us to put more greenhouse type operations within our moles, and we would like to expand the concept. The passion is there; it's clear to see. The demand is there, so we would just like to help in our small way in enabling the customers to have accessible plants. And have them at affordable prices, all under one roof. So I think that's my presentation. I'd just like to thank you all for inviting me. As I say, I'm an amateur keen gardener that just happens to be in business also. And the two came together quite well. And we believe that this is a big opportunity for Mega World Lifestyle Moles as we develop this concept. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coates. And I'm sure while you were talking about the greenhouse at Yala Alabang, the hobbyists over in the north and everywhere else were green with envy, to use green again. But it's good that you've said that you're looking into opening more of these one-stop shops for hobbyists like yourself. My question for you is, having be a hobbyist for about 30 years. Not everybody who goes into gardening actually succeeds. True story, I've had a cactus die. I don't know how it could happen, but it does happen to me. That's why I just wear my garden. But do you think that a gardener, like a hobbyist, do they have to have a certain personality in order to be successful in gardening? Like, you seem like such a patient person. I mean, having met people like that and yourself, what kind of personality should you have, or attitude?
Well, I've never looked at it as a personality, but the one thing I would tell you is that gardening really calms you down. So if you have an extreme personality, I think that if you get into gardening, it will certainly help you calm down. I mean, gardening is a thing of beauty. It's God's creation, right? So you're surrounded by greenery, you're surrounded by it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes because gardening doesn't always go the way that you want it. But, a patient gardener is a term that I like to use because you do the work, but let God take care of the other part, right? And, 9 times out of 10, you'll be okay. Sometimes a plant will die, but, there's nothing better than seeing some regrowth or rebirth of plants. It's a wonderful hobby. It's the best hobby I think you can have, actually.
I'm sure. And, we look forward to asking you more questions later. Maybe another question that I had in mind was, how are you, enjoying gardening here where the weather is really hot compared to, other countries? I know other flowers just bloom in cooler places, but we'll see all of that for later because we have one more speaker left in today's very, very interesting forum. So may I introduce our final speaker. He advises on the optimization of operation and energy performance of greenhouses and controlled environment agriculture facilities. He previously worked for the University of Costa Rica on the topic of greenhouse climate control. Moving to Europe also allowed him to obtain hands-on experience in the operation, design and construction of vertical farms. He further collaborated with the German Aerospace Center in a plant selection methodology for the International Space Station and worked with the Eden team on a vertical farming system analysis. Armed with a Master of Science degree in Biosystems Engineering from Wageningen University, where he focused his research on greenhouse humidity control methods, and his published work so far include the development of a user-friendly application for the simulation and design of greenhouse environments, the thermal response of the greenhouse in Fabio Bodrick Moreno experimental station, and using static models of energy and mass balances for simulation and climate control in protective agriculture modules. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Alberto Lopez.
Thank you very much, Tessa, for that introduction. I have a smaller one as well, and just
all the, like the names of the universities and all that. So I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's difficult to pronounce the Dutch university, the Wageningen University. It's the first thing they teach you there. So I will share my screen. Let me see. This one. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining today. So what I'm going to present here is the steps required to start your own commercial urban farming. We've been talking a lot about gardening, and now this is the other step. So how to start a commercial urban farm and what are the key elements to consider. So as Tessa explained, I'm systems engineer for agriculture. I started in Costa Rica, focused on greenhouses. Then I moved to Europe, and then I focused more into vertical farming, so into indoor farming. And following that, in the Netherlands, I started, or I helped build the first vertical farm in Amsterdam. And currently I have worked for 30 different projects under agriculture, involving all a range of services. So who are we? Who is agriculture? Agriculture, just a minute. So we are a urban agriculture consultancy. We have, we have worked over with 150 clients all around the world. The projects involve all ranges of stakeholders in the industry. We have helped entrepreneurs to develop and define initial concepts, and they take them through the designing of the farm, all through the feasibility of the project. Then we help also investors assess the strengths and risks of the projects, also business models for food production, and collaborate with industry technology providers by connecting them with potential clients and partners. So what we want as a company, as a consulting company, is to see the commercial urban agriculture grow and minimize the risk for everyone involved. I have some examples of projects that work. This one is in the Philippines. They are next level farms. They are based in Manila, and they are currently growing leafy greens out of shipping containers. So they are providing local grown high quality products. And what we did with them, we collaborated in the design of all technical aspects of their facility. This was actually one of my first projects for agriculture. Then we have also as other case study, Sky Vegetables. This is a 750 square meter rooftop greenhouse located in New York. One of the services we provided here was the training of the local staff, which constituted around 75% of all the staff in Sky Vegetables. So agriculture trainer, one of the young fellows to become the assistant grower. And then the program involved topics like crop planning, system management, routine maintenance, and also pest management as well. So that was a brief introduction of what we do. And now we go to what we think or what we consider are the steps for starting a vertical farm. So to develop a commercial urban farm, you have to start by defining your objectives. So the identification of these objectives will make it easy to track to stay in track in your plan. Then after that, you need to figure out what to grow, and then to identify what are the market potentials. So you have to analyze the market. What are the trends for fresh products, how the products are distributed, and what are the opportunities for local farming? What are the best sellers, and in which conditions this product grows. This will help you identify the suitable crops for your project. Then we move into the identification of technologies. So once you understand what crops you want to grow and what is the actual opportunity in the market, you need to understand you need to research on what options are there available from the technology perspective. So how do they compare in terms of efficiency, cost, availability? What output can I achieve based on the level of control that I have? So either if we go with greenhouses, or either we go to fully controlled indoor farms, and how can you integrate these solutions into the project? After you understand what crop you're growing, you understand what technology you are going to use, you need to assess the inputs and outputs of the project. So these are understanding the resources required to grow the actual product. So these are what are the physical constraints, the environmental constraints of the project, and what type of inputs they are required. So how many seeds will you require? What is the energy consumption? What is the water consumption? Even if you want to enrich with CO2 to promote growth, these are the considerations in this step. Then, obviously, after you have the amount of resources used, the type of technology you want to use, and the actual crops you want to grow, you need to understand and assess the financial projections. So this should include a distribution of your costs, either capital costs, both capital costs and operational costs, and also estimate the revenue. So this will help you answer questions like, is it within budget? What are your biggest costs? And what are your biggest risks? And then after that, you have to define the potential improvements in the plan. So once you have the initial improvement, the initial plan, you can assess potential improvements either in the technology you are choosing, either in the crops you want to produce, or in the inputs, how to lower the inputs and how to make the project more efficient. After all that, so this is an iterative process. After you assess all the steps, then you need to create a plan that will fulfill the initial objectives. Once you created a plan, then you are set. I want to really dig into the starting point. So what drives you? So it can be either social. So as we talked before in these presentations, in the previous presentations, maybe you want to develop your community or urban surroundings by providing labor opportunities, maybe reclaiming unused spaces, increase food security around you, or you want to create awareness and educate future generations on the importance of sustainable food production. So that's from the social aspect. Maybe your driver is environmental, so you want to reduce the amount of pesticides used in agriculture. Maybe you want to reclaim water via a closed loop system, use less space to produce at high yields, maybe produce locally to reduce the supply chain and reduce a bit of waste, or couple the food production with other types of systems that will decrease the environmental footprint. This is particularly important in indoor systems and highly controlled systems and the energy aspect. And then you can have the economic driver. So you came upon a high return of investment opportunity in the agricultural sector. We have identified, based on our previous projects, some key points that will give you a head start. So let's say you start already having the market, so you know where to sell the product, you have already the deal, so you have the supermarket will buy your product. This is a good place to be. So you basically just have to design the farm and create a plan to grow those products. A good recommendation is to start small and then master the processes and develop a homogeneous production before scaling up. Then you may start from the point of the investment. So you have the money to develop a project and you decide to go with a commercial urban farm. This is obviously beneficial because you won't have financial pressure caused by loans or debt. And a good recommendation is always to stay focused. So it's okay to have the initial investment, but you really need to assess how you spend your money. Maybe you have your own location, so you have a place, an unused space that you want to use for commercial urban farming. Obviously, it's really beneficial because you don't have the rent or, let's say, land costs in your balance sheet. And this is particularly important in urban farming since the cost per square meter in cities is really, really high sometimes. Finally, you have a game-changer technology. And game-changing technology, it has to be assessed if, like benchmark, under the current scenarios, right? So if you have a technology that will increase efficiencies of the process, will increase your yield output, you will have an edge on the industry. However, you really need to assess what type of edge you have. So you need to do a competitor analysis all around. And those are key points for a head start. Key points to increase the chance of success of your enterprise. This can be applicable also to other types of industries. So you have, and this is based on experience, you have execution and you have team. You have to select the right team. For the execution, there are plenty of ideas out there. Let's say, planning is really important and will decrease the risk of failure. But the timely execution is essential for the success of your endeavor. From the team, you need to figure out what you know, so what aspects are involved in the production, what aspects you are really familiar, what aspects you need help with. So, for example, in commercial farming endeavor, you have the agronomy aspect. Obviously, if we're talking about growing plants, you need to understand what the plant needs and how those factors interact. Then you have the technology aspect. Once you know the optimal conditions at which those crops grow, we need to identify the proper technologies to provide them. A really important one is the data management aspect. This will enable you to find the quickest way to obtain optimal yield and decrease the cost of production. And it will allow you to forecast the future changes in production and adapt really, really fast. Then we have the financial aspect. You have to assess the trade-offs between the technology that enables to grow and the yield that you are obtaining. And this comes particularly from the financial perspective. This is one of the biggest constraints. And finally, we have the marketing aspect. So always be on the lookout for potential opportunities. The advice, and then this is a good place to be, is to place yourself in a luxury position of not having enough product to sell, and then always plan for expansions in a timely manner. And then, since planning is a really big part of any business, especially in urban farming, agriculture has created this tool. It's called Agritecture Designer. It allows entrepreneurs around the world to explore the costs and concepts around urban agriculture, and it makes it more effective and easier to get to the next step. So what it is, it couples a tool that centers your objective. So what is your driver? Is it environmental? Is it social? Is it economic? And gives you an idea of what type of resources it takes to realize it. So basically, the output of this system is a 10-year economic projection of your business. It will give you what the payback will be, what amount of money you need to raise to fulfill the project, and what are the challenges you're going to face. We also coupled this with a set of courses to help you understand how to use the tool, how to make better decisions, and how to do your own market research. And then, this will allow you to take the most out of the result of your projection. And that's Agritecture Designer. And so if you want to know a bit more about agriculture services or maybe general information about the industry, you can visit our website, agritecture.com. If you want to get access to Agritecture Design and try it out, you can visit design.agritecture.com, and you will get a 10% discount with the code that is on the slide. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez, for your interesting presentation. Actually, as you were speaking, my Viber and then the Facebook comment section, they were all, just coming up with one very, very important question. And they just want to know from you, are you single or are you married?
I'm single.
There you go. ladies. We've had that question popping up quite a lot through your presentation, but there are more focused questions later on. But we had to ask the important ones before then.
Okay.
I'd like to call on the rest of our speakers for the question and answer portion. The fourth, may I call them one by one? Of course, to join Mr. Alberto Lopez is Miss Angie King, Mr. Nicolo Duri, Mr. Tom Coates, Dr. Fernando Sanchez, Professor Ryan Tayobong, and Professor Brian Apasionado. Of course, our esteemed professors from the UP Los Baños.
So we have a question here for Mr. Graham Coates. It's from Adrian Reyes. Having tilled your own garden wherever you've worked in Europe, the United States, and Asia, including here, so what are the unique soil and climate conditions in the Philippines that can be capitalized upon so we can produce globally competitive plant varieties?
Well, interestingly enough, most of the countries that I've worked in are on the same equator line. So if you were to draw a line, I've worked in Barbados, Singapore, the United States, Indonesia. If you draw a line, the equator is almost the same. So the tendency of the plants is to be the same. So my favorite plant of all time is the bougainvillea. The bougainvillea, to me, I've seen it flourish in Singapore. If you go to Singapore, you see it everywhere across the airport. In the Philippines, it's very prominent as well. It's one of those plants that the more you neglect, the better it becomes in some ways. No? So in my garden, in my particular garden, I have different varieties of bougainvillea. And some people tell you bougainvillea cannot survive in the sea, in a beach environment. It's not true. It thrives, actually. So, the Philippines is blessed with its tropical climate. I'm not an expert in terms of... I was very interested to see one of the presentations that says that we have one of the worst soil quality in the world. No, we've tend to over farmed our soil, and I can relate a little bit because in my property it's on a slope. So I was listening intently on how to navigate slopes because my property is all on slope, but. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? You can find a way to garden in any environment. So personally, you're given a piece of land, you just have to work with it. There's no such thing as a perfect piece of land. You just have to toil it. You have to enrich the soil. You have to do that by putting, the right organic fertilizers. I have my own organic fertilizer, which I make. And yeah, you just need to put a lot of hard work into making sure whatever environment you have, whether that's a balcony or a small plot of land or a big plot of land, you really need to toil it and you need to nurture it and you need to, take care of what you have. So it's horses for courses. You really just have to develop what you have. But for me, bougainvillea is my go-to plant.
Thank you for that, Mr. Coates. And that and patience, like you said, and that and patience, and leave part of it to God. My next question, I think I'd like to ask our professors from UPLB. For our foreign guests, I'm sorry that I'll have to speak in Filipino, but there's a question from Kathy Lambina. Siguro po sila, Dr. Sanchez, Professor Tayobong, Professor Apasionado, you could just chime in. Sabi po niya, totoo raw po ba na may malamig ang kamay or green thumb para makapagpatubo ng mga halaman? Sabi ko ako nakakatakot po yung malamig na kamay. Ang alam ko sa malamig na kamay, iba. Pero baka may alam ho kayo.
In my experience, there's no such thing as cool hands or warm hands. Just knowing how to plant a crop or a plant. It's just your will to learn how to plant crops or how to plant ornamental plants and how to be creative on doing things. So it can be learned. So assuming you don't know how to grow plants, you can learn it through hard work and experience. It's a learning process that has to be done. That's why we at EL try to teach people, young and old, on how to grow crops in order to feed themselves. So it's a misnomer that you have warm hands or cool hands. You'll be a good agriculturist or horticulturist for that matter.
Thank you very much for that, Doctor. So, there's hope for everybody to actually, grow greens, grow edible plants in your gardens and probably just pick them and start cooking, diba? Tanong ko naman kay Professor Ryan and Brian, yun bang lumpia garden ko, pag tinayo natin yun, may kasama na ba siyang sauce? I was just asking them if the lumpia garden comes with sauce, but no, I think the Fort has a more interesting question from his end.
Well, we have a question here from Ace Acevedo. Are water drips from air conditioning units safe for plants to just cycle that back into your gardens?
Would anybody like to answer that? Water drippings from air conditioners, do they harm the plants or?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Orlando.
Okay. Yes, you can use. My wife actually uses it in her plant, the small plant space in the house. So we have 3 air conditioners. Then there's a small can. My wife or a glass. When the dripping comes every morning, she waters her plant using air conditioned. It's simple condensation. It's part of the cooling system. It's still water going down the container, collecting container for water. So yes, can be used for watering plants.
Great. Another question for Ms. Angie King. We have some viewers who are asking, would you ever consider, after the pandemic, maybe when ECQs are lifted, if you would open King Tower Farm to visitors?
Sorry, we're a private farm, so no. But I do share everything online. I do try to vlog and share as much information as possible for other people to learn as well.
Thank you for that. If anything, I think what we realize today, it's not just, the science of growing and all these things, but it's also, you all are artists, all of you, in the way that you put together your gardens, your farms and everything. So I think that's really what is, people are coming to love about gardening. It's also a way to make their homes beautiful. DeFort, any questions from your end?
Well, yes, we've been talking about how beauty and being able to adjust our state of mind through our plants, but some people here would like to know the economic aspect of it. So maybe we can ask Mr. Nicolo Aberastri from Manuel Mandani, which vertical indoor farms have managed to reach supermarkets or other endeavors, similar endeavors?
Well, vertical indoor farms require a substantial amount of capital. No? So I think there's a few of them right now. You have Next Level, I think. They are working with architecture, I guess. They are in supermarket. There are also some farms who do not really a hydroponic setup, but it's more a combination of organic and inorganic, no? And I think you will have more of them present in supermarkets and major retail outlets, no. So so I would say there's more of the mix setup wherein they actually use a media, no, a growing media, mainly coco peat, which is pretty much available all over the Philippines, and then they combine it with a hydroponic solution and some organic based composts. So these would be the more common ones that would be present in many of our supermarket. So you have Salad Time who's doing something like this. You also have a couple more, other operations.
So it's not just something very aesthetic, but it's also very rewarding in terms of getting into your micro business or even large scale entrepreneurship.
I guess when you're growing indoor, especially in our climate here, when we have a lot of rain, it actually gives you that opportunity to be able to produce on a weekly basis, even during the rainy season. So, like in our case, in our operations, we do grow a lot of salad greens supermarket. We have an indoor and an outdoor. So we grow. There are some varieties that can handle the rain outdoor, but we also do grow an indoor. So we have a steady supply.
Okay, thank you for that. I think in terms of growing plants and indoor and outdoor structures, maybe we can ask Alberto Lopez this question from Fatima Cancel. What system is ideal for the Philippines, greenhouse or CEA?
Yeah, that depends mostly on your drivers, right? So if we're talking about the Philippines, I guess it's high temperature, high humidity. So those are what we call the limiting factors. So if we take an example, let's say against the Netherlands, where I am, the limiting factor here is not high humidity, high temperatures. The limiting factor here is lighting. So here, it makes more sense to use artificial lighting. So if you manage to identify what is your limiting factor, you manage to identify what is the best growing condition. So, yeah, to put it lightly, I think for the Philippines, high tunnel, so a big natural ventilated greenhouse under tropical conditions, that would be an ideal situation to start. However, you need to analyze. It comes a lot of factors comes into play, right? So you need to analyze what is your let's say output from that type of system, because maybe you want to grow at higher yields. So you need to optimize the climatic conditions and nutrition conditions inside. So that makes you, let's say, or that will help you identify what is the leap between going from a simple greenhouse to a bit more technified greenhouse to a fully controlled production. It depends from the market side, from the consumer side, and from the operational side as well.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lopez. I think maybe we could ask either Professor Ryan or Professor Brian. We have a history book author actually watching us. Desiree Ancua Benipayo is watching us. Hello, ma'am. She's asking, would like to try live ladybug to combat pests. Can you buy these? Meron na daw po ba tayong ladybug razors? Professors Brian and Ryan, would you be able to answer this? Or anyone else in the panel? Ladybugs? No?
So for the ladybugs, actually, I'm not aware if we have bring it to the commercial level. Pero you can rear ladybugs at your home, allowing your ladybugs to just stay and having a selection of organic pesticide to apply. But in terms of commercialization of ladybug, I don't know if one of our members of the team can have an experience of having this in commercial availability. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know. Mr. Coates, have you ever heard of that? Ladybugs being used for as pesticide? I mean, is it something that
only in the UK? They're so prevalent there. They're just natural, you know. So, but not here in the Philippines. I've not heard of them. I've not seen any ladybugs in the Philippines, but in the UK, yes, very prevalent. They're everywhere. They're the gardener's friend.
It's very interesting, though. I was asking you earlier. I'd just like to know if there's a particular plant or flower that you would love to grow, but can't because you have decided to grow your gardens here in the Philippines.
Yeah, well, my wife's biggest complaint always is that we don't have enough flowering plants, like hanging baskets and things like that. It's really difficult in the extreme weather we have here. if you go to colder countries, you know, you see the beautiful flowers there hanging from every building. But here, the weather is so extreme, you know, and the rainfall is so high. Like now, I'm contending with potential typhoons, and it's the rainy season, so it's very difficult. My favorite season is really coming up to after the typhoons. Then we go into summer, and you can do more things there. But during the rainy season, it's a challenge, and with the typhoons, it's a challenge to keep things alive.
Thank you very much for that. And maybe just one last question for Ms. Angie. I mean, we're talking about flowering plants and all that. Have you ever gone into that as well, or are they really mostly, you know, vegetables that you've started farming over there in Laguna?
Well, actually, when we started here till today, I've planted about 1,700 fruit trees. So we've been on a rampage because the bees use the flowers as their daily food. But the fruit trees is where they actually harvest for the long haul. So you need a lot of fruit trees, like, you know, the mangoes, and then any of the big trees that have lots of nectar. The bees love that. So we've been planting that rapidly. We've been focusing also on a lot of calamansi. So calamansi, as we know, is a staple in all Filipino dishes, and it's an annual plant which gives its fruit the whole year, plus the bees love it also. So we've been focusing on all the bee foods that we can adopt into the farm so that we can sustain the bee population here. Currently, we only have, I think, 300 colonies, and it's been going up, going down. So it's been very hard. When Taal volcano had its first eruption, and we got ash covering everything, we actually didn't have any honey harvest because all the flowers had ash in it, and then when it rained, the flowers were so heavy that they ended up falling off. So it was actually a nightmare for the bees. So we had to supplement and feed them sugared water temporarily. I want to comment also on the ladybugs. You have to be careful. For my research, there are so many look-alike ladybugs that are herbivores, and there's only 4 species of ladybugs that I know that are carnivorous, where they will eat other pests. The other 16 lookalikes, they all eat plants. So just be careful with that. I actually did an experiment with breeding praying mantises, and we ended up releasing them into the garden. But so far, I don't know if the pest has been reduced, because the problem with pests is they multiply way faster than any of the predators.
Oh, wow. You know, we tend to think of planting as like, you know, just like putting seed into the soil, letting it grow and all that. But we forget that it involves so many other things, and it really makes it sound so exciting, especially all of these experiments that, you know, you conduct over there in the farm, you know. So I'm sure that we've made lots of plantitos and plantitas with our forum today. Therefore, I think there's one last question. We have a lot, actually. It's just that we're pressed for time, but we do have one question to wrap everything up, and I think DeFort has that over at his end.
Yes, Tessa. So we're throwing this out to all of you to be able to answer based on your opinions. We've been discussing about planning and in terms of growing and all the tips involved with that. But we haven't actually touched upon post-harvesting. There are a lot of best practices that can actually be beneficial for farmers and businesses related to this. Perhaps you could give your opinions on post-harvest best practices.
Okay, maybe I can start.
From all of our speakers?
Yeah, okay. We a farm in Mindanao, no? So we do a lot of post-harvest handling, as bulk of our market is really here in Manila. And so we harvest in the farm, in our own farm. There are several things that we believe is crucial, no, to be able to ship something of good quality. And one of that is in the beds. We do use crates. a lot of our farmers are still using jute sacks, no? So this bruises a lot of the vegetables a lot. And then by the time it gets to our packing area, we cool it down right away. So it does need some investment in a cooling facility, but any vegetable crop that you harvest from the field is already carrying heat, no? So one way to cut the deterioration of the vegetable is to cool it down right away. And you can do this using several methods. So you can do a quick dip in ice cold water. So if you have access to ice, we do use that, and we let it sit in a pre-cooling cold room at 1 to 2 degrees for about 4 hours, where we cool down the vegetables and the boxes before we ship it here. So by the time it gets to the airport in Manila and to our facility, the vegetables are still cold, no? So and we can easily sort that out and send it to the buyers. So yeah, I mean, there's really a logistics thing here, but it really you will be saving about 30% from our own records, no, just by installing this post-harvest treatments in place. I hope that answers some of the questions.
Any others would like to chime in terms of their opinions?
Doctor, kayo muna.
Oh, Miss Angie? Okay. Yes, post-harvest handling is very critical in any agricultural production. So technically, tama po si Sir Nico regarding cooling it down, because if you put it in a high temperature, respiration rate of the harvested plant would increase, so deterioration rate hence increases. So that's why there are traditional and modern ways of doing post-harvest handling. During the early times or in the barrios, you use the concept of evapotranspiration, wherein you put the vegetable in the clay pot with water, then the heat during the respiration of the vegetable now encourages evaporation inside the pot, hence cooling the inner portion of the clay pot. That's a concept of evapotranspiration. That's why it's very critical for us because when we harvest crops, that starts the deterioration rate of the produce. So, and it's specific for each type of vegetables. It has a specific post-harvest handling technology, especially for fruit crops like banana has a separate post-harvest handling technology. That's why when we harvest banana in the plantation, immediately it is processed, put in a box, put it in a refrigerated van, goes to the ship with refrigeration, and it goes to Japan to be sold. So there's different types of technologies in post-harvest. In UPLB, we have a specific institute that deals with post-harvest handling. It's the post-harvest PHRTC. So technically, it's a science in order for us to preserve or make the shelf life of a specific agricultural crop, prolong the shelf life of that agricultural crop. So
Angie, would you like to share?
Yes, for our farm, we actually, the afternoon before we harvest the next day, we'll pick already which things we need to harvest. And then we wake up at 3 to 4 a.m. and we harvest before the sunrise, so that we make sure that when we put it into the van by 5 a.m., it's still, there's no heat because the heat is the enemy, because you will wilt the leafy veg and then you will dry out the fruiting veg. So we want to make sure that we get it to Manila, into our central kitchen, so that we can use it for our menus and our foods. So we want to make sure that we harvest early in the morning, so that we beat the traffic and it's not hot inside the car, because we don't have a refrigerated van that we use yet. And I want to say I'm a fan of Down to Earth, Mr. Nicola.
Hi, Angie. Hi, I'm also a fan of yours. I follow you all the time.
We certainly have a great mix of authorities in gardening and farming here with us today. And if anything, I think if you haven't turned our viewers into plantitos and plantitas, I think we should all really, really savor all the fruit, all the vegetable that we actually eat, every day, because as you've heard from all of our guests, it takes so much. I mean, there's love, there's, blood, sweat, and tears, and then all of the waking up and everything early just to get them to our tables. So there's really, really so much that we could discuss on these topics, but I'm afraid that's really all the time that we have left. But, we'd love to have all of you again. And definitely, we will enjoy writing about you in the various sections of the Manila Times. For my section in the lifestyle section, we also have an agriculture section. Our reporters there are also, watching this forum, and they will be writing about our esteemed guests and your projects in our paper in the coming days. DeFort?
We have a lot of stories to tell, yes.
Definitely.
Thank you for giving a lot of people's fertile minds, allowing it to grow and being able to give us more fruitful plans and dreams of being able to develop or grow out of being just mere plantitos and plantitas into becoming entrepreneurs and agripreneurs.
And very, very happy, fulfilled folks, that we see today here in our gallery. Once again, thank you for your passion. It really has rubbed all of us. And I'm sure that, I will give my cactus plant another try. I don't know why it dies on me. It really, really does. But with your inspiration, I am sure, we will get there, and we will also have our different gardens named after Filipino dishes, as our professors have said to us. Once again, our gratitude to Mr. Alberto Lopez, Ms. Angie King, Mr. Nicolo Aberasturi, Mr. Graham Coates, Dr. Fernando Sanchez, Professor Ryan Taino, and Professor Brian Apasionado. Mabuhay po kayo. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much.
In 2019, after completing our 100th consultation, the team at Agritecture put our heads together to figure out how we could best serve our audience with a low-cost digital platform for planning commercial urban farms. The result is Agritecture Designer. Through easy-to-navigate tools, customized educational content, and unique partnerships with financing vehicles and solutions providers, Agritecture Designer makes the complex challenge of planning a controlled environment farm straightforward. First, we'll help you lay out your vision and find inspiration from existing farm projects. Next, 6 of our expert consultants will walk you through the key best practices any entrepreneur needs to know when starting an urban ag business through concise video modules, along with supplementary resources and activities. Our crop research tool will help you conduct a data-driven market research and calculate a fair market price for the crops you are considering growing. Next, our farm modeling tool will allow you to build financial projections for a controlled environment farm anywhere in the world in less than 5 minutes. Finally, our agritecture consulting staff will advise you on site selection, equipment selection, and financing prep. Agritecture Designer is 100% focused on delivering value to our users, so we're constantly evolving the platform based on direct user feedback. Our vision is to transform the industry so that anyone, anywhere can plan a viable urban farming business with ease. So join us.
Tessa, guess what just arrived? Got delivered straight to the home.
I will guess. I'm sure it's a delicious goodie bag. Am I right? Is it?
The most excellent snack from
Baker J. Thank you very much.
Baker J.
Sponsoring our food today. We did send it to the team and of course our esteemed guests. I think everybody had to log off already because they're really raring to have a bit of a snack and dip into their Baker J goodie bag. So thank you very much once again to our delicious sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, the fourth Tessa.